Okay, hi friends. Welcome to the Low-Carb Logic podcast. And today we have Craig Huntington, who's one of the influencers on X in relation to health, fitness, and the right kind of eating. And we're going to hear a little bit about that today. We're going to talk about Craig's background and all the interesting things that he has to offer and he has to suggest to us. So anyway, Craig, welcome. We've been looking forward to having you on board here today. And
Great. I'm humbled. Thank you.
And anyway, Craig, tell us a little bit about, how did you get to where you are today? How did you become an expert on
Hardly an expert.
how
That's
to
a
be?
little much. But
Yeah. Anyway,
you mean you want me to go back to the very beginning, like kind of how I got influenced to, get it?
yeah, please.
Yeah. So when I was a little kid, I loved comic books, and I can remember specifically one comic book when I think I was 6 years old. It was a Batman detective comics, and I was drawn to the muscles that Batman had on the cover, So loved comic books, loved the way they were drawn. That kind of started my lifelong love affair with muscle and bodybuilding. And then from there, it was probably I would say the Conan paperbacks, the Robert E. Howard, Conan the Barbarian, and Frank Frazetta's artwork. Mainly Frank Frazetta, massive Frank Frazetta fan. The only artist I like more than Frank Frazetta is my son. My son's a phenomenal artist, and he's actually drawn for my birthday two of his renditions of a Conan the Barbarian, two completely different ones that I have framed in my gym. Really cool.
Great.
So and then from there was Arnold, Arnold movies, but I really got into weightlifting because of American football. I wasn't very good. I mean, I was okay, but my coach came to me when the season was over and said, you'd play a lot more if you got bigger and stronger. And that's when I really got into consistent weightlifting. I kind of dabbled in it when I was, I'd say 12. My dad bought me a barbell set and I just kind of messed around. But then I got really serious when I was 15 because of football. And then from there, I just became like an avocation, just consistent, just loved the way it felt. I built a lot of muscle very quickly. So that was my biggest influence as far as bodybuilding goes.
So you've pretty much been in good shape all your life.
Pretty much. I mean, I had some periods here and there where I had a bit of a drinking problem in my teeth, and it licked that 15 years ago. Thankfully, I decided that it wasn't, the pros weren't outweighing the cons, and I was probably in my worst shape when I quit drinking.
Yeah.
My worst shape of my life. And then I quit just in time for my 20th high school reunion. I got my stuff together, and when I went to my reunion, everyone said, "Oh, you look the same. You haven't changed a bit." And that was, I knew I had done my job, or I'd done, I made the right decision. So, but as far as my personal training started, August of 1994, I started a personal training business when I was 23. And it's been 30 years, and I absolutely love it. I still train people one-on-one. I have my own personal training studio, and
Fantastic.
I still love it. It's never gotten old for me.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at I've been looking obviously at your website as well. So yeah, it looks very nice. And of course, I'm looking at your videos and X posts, and very
I
very
try to
convincing.
demonstrate my version. I always tell people if you don't like if you don't like your progress, you don't like the way things are going, I can help you try something different. I don't try to pretend that I think my way is the best way of doing things, but if someone's doing really well with their own thing, I'm not going to try to convince anyone that they're wrong or the one thing that I really try to harp on is the safety issue. You should never, with exercise, it should be an extremely high reward with very little risk at all. And if you get hurt while you strength train or while exercising, it's your fault. It's human error. You should never get hurt. So that's my biggest, I guess my biggest contribution. That's what I try to help people out with.
Yeah, I think anyway, I've noticed you make the point from time to time, and I do agree. I think there's an interesting kind of I don't know if it's a discussion, but kind of there seems to be two camps. One camp is machines are no good and everything
Yep.
has to be free weights, and then there
Yep.
is free weights are no good. I don't know. I'm kind of in both camps. It depends, but I think I don't think the muscle knows what it
Exactly.
is you're grabbing.
Muscle only knows resistance, and it doesn't know where it's coming from. There are free weight exercises that I absolutely love. I love doing, or I don't know if it's considered free weight or body weight chin ups is like my favorite exercise of all time. Uh,
Yeah.
but there are definitely some
It's a
advantages.
good, Greg. It's a good one unless you make 100 a day, and you haven't worked yourself up to it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I did it in
yep.
July, and I've still got
Nice.
golfer's elbow. But anyway,
We can always add some weight, right? Little dip and chin belt, throw some weight on there, you know. But yeah, so I whatever, it's the tool, or what I should say, it's how you use the tool, not the tool itself. And if you have
yeah,
free weights have obviously been incredibly productive for like 150 years, you know, since the barbell was invented. So, you know, people have gotten great results from free weights. So I'm not going to deny that at all. I do have some pretty cool equipment, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. But I can get a great workout with free weights, going to like on vacation, going to working out in a hotel gym. You know, it's if you know how to do it, you can get a good workout anywhere with anything. So that's my
yeah. And
stand.
I guess my impression is maybe kind of that it's the free weight guys. They seem to be very against machines, but the
Mhm.
rest of the people are
Yep.
maybe a little bit flexible. But anyway, we'll get back to that. But I have a kind of a starting question, kind of on your, if we kind of work into it, that how would you describe your general approach to health and fitness? How would you summarize it?
It's tough. I think it should be simple. You know, it shouldn't be so complicated. I try to teach my clients and anyone else who wants to learn that, you know, you don't need to make it like another career. You don't need to make it a 9 to 5 job. Time is it's only valuable because you have to spend a certain amount of time exercising. And even with nutrition, you don't have to spend a lot of time like doing all this meal prepping and some of the crazy, like, I'm not against that. If someone wants to do that, great, but you don't have to. It's not a requirement, you know. The longer I've done this, the more I guess simplified, or the more simple my advice gets to people, you know. And I think it's a shame if people don't train because they think they have to spend all this time or they have to make it super complicated. So I guess I try to simplify it. Strength train, and I've been following a low carb, I guess, lifestyle for 22 years now, and mostly carnivore since 2019. So
Yeah, that
that's
was going to
kind
be
of
my
in a
next
nutshell.
question. My next question was going to be kind of the dietary. What's your dietary recommendation, and take on that?
Yeah, I started with like low carb. I've gotten really lean. I did 2 bodybuilding competitions when I was younger using like a high carbohydrate approach, and I got very, very lean, you know. But to me, like I think the most important thing is controlling hunger, and obviously like getting what you need. You know, I've approached nutrition from more of a need standpoint, especially within the last couple of years. Do I need to eat plants, fruits, vegetables? No, I don't. I've done extremely well without it. And I don't tell people, oh, never eat fruit or never eat vegetables. If they do okay with it, fine. And I thought I was fine with it until I stopped eating it. And then all of a sudden it was like my digestion is like flawless if I don't touch plants. And it's not even that
It's
it's
crazy.
horrible when I eat like one thing. It's more of a buildup. It starts to get really bad if I, start to incorporate like plants back in. And
Yeah,
I didn't realize that until I stopped eating them. So yeah, I
yeah,
guess like it's more of a general health. Like I feel like I've optimized, or I've become much healthier overall by eating a low carb and then converting more towards like a almost probably 90% carnivore.
yeah. Sounds very kind of similar experience. I think one of the crazy things, or it just felt crazy because we've been told for decades that you need to eat loads of fiber and whatever, all kinds of things. And then when you do the experiments, my first experiment was I'm going to go a week, and then I went a month without
Yep.
any fiber at all.
Yep.
Absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
It was just crazy.
Well,
I thought it can't be
you
true.
were a huge influence on me a couple months ago when you posted about stopping dairy and
Yeah.
like being able to sleep through the night without going to the bathroom multiple times. And I've never had a problem with dairy. I never had a problem digesting it. I always felt fine with it. But I was starting to go to the bathroom like a lot at night, and it was really alarming. I thought, do I have a prostate issue? Like I didn't know. And then when I saw your post, I'm like, oh, because I was eating cottage cheese with whey at night, like after dinner,
Yeah.
and I just stopped doing it. And lo and behold, I same thing. I think I go maybe once a night in the middle of the night, and I get right back to sleep.
Yeah.
So I mean, that was huge. Where I didn't realize I had a problem with it. I guess.
Yeah, it's kind of, I think it's kind of interesting. I suppose what, my kind of approach is just, try, kick the tires and see what happens type of n equals one. And and then sometimes you learn something, sometimes it doesn't, it has no effect. You can do things either way.
I mean, we're
that's
all
the beauty of
our own most valuable lab rats, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's
James,
the beauty of the self-experiment, isn't it?
Definitely.
Yeah, and then at least then and I suppose one of the things that we're kind of trying to achieve with these talks and that we have is to get, we want to stay open-minded and get some different viewpoints and see what what are the approaches that work. And I think there might be a little bit of a tendency, certainly I have a tendency to say that when I find something that it's worked so well, you kind of get very convinced that, okay, I'm just going to do this and I'm not going to, everything else can't work. But that's not necessarily true.
Oh, definitely.
How do we know? Anyway, we're talking about fiber. What other, do you have any other common misconceptions about nutrition or working out that you typically see and that we could talk about?
I'd say with working out, it's just the time. It's people think that time is the most valuable aspect, the amount of exercises they do, how frequently they train. And those are, to me, it's intensity. It's how hard you train. And I don't think most people train hard enough. And when you train really, really hard, it kind of negates your ability to train for very long and to train very often. And there's like a 50-50, I would say a 50-50. The workout and the recovery are kind of a 50-50 proposition. And if you train too long and too often, you never actually, your body is stimulated, but then it never gets to produce the change that it's supposed to produce, that adaptation. So, and I think everybody's different in the respect that, some people can tolerate more than others. And I usually tell people, if you're not happy with your progress, training more often or training or doing more exercises is usually you're usually going in the wrong direction. One of my biggest influences is Drew Bay. I don't know if you guys know Drew Bay at all, but he always says, everyone would do a lot better. The average person would do a lot better if they trained twice as hard and half as much. And that's something you're going to have to find out for yourself. I always say, like, I think there's a continuum of how much can I get away with versus how much do I need? And as I've gotten older, I realize that space is so short for me personally. That continuum is very, very short for me. And I do enjoy training. Like, I enjoy the feeling. I got addicted to the whole feeling when I was younger. No, I love it. I mean, I don't love certain exercises, like when I'm like in the throes of doing it. It sucks. It hurts. It's very, very hard. I try to train as hard as I possibly can. But yeah, so I think it's just it's the length of time people spend or the amount of exercises or the amount of workouts they do. I think most people do too much and they don't train hard enough. As far as nutrition, I think the idea of meat being bad is still kind of like in the air. People still believe it. The lipid hypothesis, and that's really kind of disturbing to me because I think that's much more serious. That's a more serious problem. People are, they're losing their health because they've been led to believe that meat is bad, and that's
It's crazy.
Probably the biggest misconception, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think, when I start out on my journey, I basically, I just changed my diet. I didn't exercise at all. until after I'd lost my weight and regained my basic health.
Yeah, so that was the same for me.
Which I later understood probably can be a good idea, not to increase training in a phase when you need to lose a lot of weight and stuff like that.
Is that because like training stimulates hunger or stimulates appetite or inflammation? Like I'm not disagreeing with that at all. I try to encourage people to strength train while they're trying to lose fat, because it's there's a muscle sparing quality to strength training. I mean, I don't know if that's why you guys did that.
That corresponds to my understanding as well. I think the big one is probably if you kind of start training seriously for an Ironman competition, and you never did it before, so loads of cardio, you drive up your cortisol, and then you have a mechanism that you're not really going to lose weight effectively at all. And many of the issues that you want to get rid of, you're not going to resolve. So like high blood glucose and all the host of things which are related to that. In my case, it was high blood pressure. I was I was just over the limit for type 2 diabetes and all these things, and that kind of resolved within high blood pressure. Within a few weeks, I was off medication and everything, but then,
it's amazing how quickly that your metabolic health can improve with the dietary change. And that's another thing people don't realize. It's like within weeks, all your levels, whatever that is, whatever they are, whatever they're indicating, could drop to normal or healthy range just within weeks, or maybe even like days.
Even days with some things. Yeah, it was just crazy with the blood pressure medication. I had to stop after a few days because I got so dizzy, because that's one of the first things. Even when you just start losing water weight, your blood pressure goes down immediately, and then when you're medicated, you're kind of
So you had basically like
so you had that effect from the blood pressure medication, like you. Okay. Well, wow.
Yeah. I was just continuously dizzy from day 3 or 4, and then I thought, what's wrong? Okay, I measured my blood pressure, and then I understood the mechanisms, and I just stopped the medication. And
it does show
was it making your blood pressure too low? Was it making it lower than it should have been? Like
too low. Yeah, too low. Yeah. I was getting well, let's say it was getting quite low, so it was like 90 over 50 and things like that. So, or an 85 over 50, very low for me anyway. So, and I was just crazy dizzy. So
can I ask a question? So there was something you mentioned, Craig, which was, did you say 20 years ago you started the low carb diet? So just to put that into perspective, for me, I was 10 years old at that point in time. What on earth did the low carb world look like back then? Like, I imagine there was even more like uproar about it than there is today.
You know what? I think there was a period of time where Dr. Atkins really kind of became came back into like popularity. Like, it became popular. So like probably the mid 90s, and I poo-pooed the Atkins diet stupidly, like ignorantly. I had clients, I had friends that did it and got spectacular results. And I'm embarrassed to say that I would like almost try to tell them, oh, it's not healthy. And I fell for all the BS, that I bought into the low fat. I was the low fat generation, the early 1980s. I was junior high school. So that was pushed on me. And now, class, I don't know like how old you are, but like that was like, I was
massive. Low fat was the way.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then
seed oils, low fat.
Yeah. What happened was I read, my mother actually bought me a book for Christmas in Christmas of 2001. It's called Protein Power by Mary and Michael Eads. And I read that cover to cover in, I don't know, a few days, and it blew my mind. And that's what got me started on my journey to actually learn about nutrition. I didn't have a clue before that. I was just eat less food and you'll get lean, and it worked for me, stuff like that. But as far as like general health, like that book was like my come to Jesus moment.
Yeah, so there was a
Yeah,
sort of, like
great.
you're saying about the Atkins, so it wasn't as scary as people try and make it sound. It sounds like this sort of low carb way of life comes in waves throughout time, maybe.
Definitely.
Especially
Yep.
especially over the last
Absolutely.
couple of years. And about the sort of exercise, like your company, was it Back to Health, Back to Fitness? Was it
Yeah. Back to Health Total Fitness.
Back to Health Total Fitness?
Originally, it was just me. I started in 1994. I opened my own studio in 1996, and then one of my good friends who was also a trainer, and we also had we shared the same, I guess, training philosophy. We were both heavily influenced by Mike Mentzer, and
Yeah.
so he had an idea to buy Med-X,
Okay.
and the Med-X lumbar. We both kind of worshipped at the altar of Arthur Jones and Med-X, and then he became aware of Med-X launching an exercise only line for their what originally was their hospital rehabilitation equipment, which cost in the neighborhood of like $65,000. There was no way in hell we'd ever be able to afford even one of those. But then the exercise only line came out, so he said, "Hey, why don't we do like an exercise, like almost like a spinal rehabilitation like clinic, like spine specific exercise." And then we bought the Med-X line, and that's how he came aboard as my partner in 2006. And that's kind of how that's how we became Back to Health Total Fitness. It was a play on backs, spine. So that's how we came up with that name.
Yeah, good. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Can I
so
I'm sorry, James. Did you have a question about my training philosophy or?
So if I just carry on with that, so I was just going to say, so like I was similar to Klaus, so I lost X amount of weight, and then I think we had a very quick back and forth on one of my posts, which was about I haven't set foot in the gym for 10 years. Someone help, and then you sent a link to the full body workout, which is on your website. And I've basically been doing that religiously since, and the muscle, like the muscle came back within 2 months. I was in the gym for probably 35 to 45 minutes, 2 to 3 times a week as recommended.
Fantastic.
And things have come on in leaps and bounds. Like, it's crazy. Like,
Awesome.
I'm in better shape now than I was 10 years ago. And like,
that's awesome.
I was very similar to you, like what you said about when you first started training, which was I would spend 3 hours a day, 6 days a week in the gym and just absolutely annihilate myself just in search for these gains, and like trying to comprehend the fact that you only spend 35, 45 minutes in the gym for 2 or 3 times a week is mind-blowing. Like, I wish more people could understand this. Like, just try it. It's hard to get the old habits out. It's really hard to, what it's like. You get it in your head, you want to start slamming the weights, but you just have to be completely composed and try and breathe normally throughout all of the exercises. It's fantastic. So thank you for sharing that at that point in time.
It's interesting if you guys want to indulge me. When I first started training, going back to that, my football coach, telling me to start lifting weights, the gym at my high school was open after school. He started basically an open gym program. My coach did. And the interesting thing was it was only open 3 days a week, the gym. There was no one else there to supervise. It was only 3 days a week that they had supervision. And it was open for 45 minutes. And that was like immediately when school ended. So it took me like, let's say 10, 15 minutes to get down to the gym. So I really only trained for maybe a half an hour, 40 minutes, 3 times a week when I first started. And that's when I went from about 150 pounds as a sophomore to right before football started. 6 months later, I was 180 pounds. So I really only trained for about an hour and a half a week. Those are like probably the best gains until I discovered Mike Mentzer at 23 years old. What happened was I thought, to your point, James, more is better. If I train more, then I'm going to make even better gains. And the reality was I made the best gains when I first started from age 15 and a half to 16. Not realizing it was because I only had that amount of time and I tried to make the most of it.
Yeah. And Mike was pretty clear on his views on overtraining for sure.
Yep, definitely. I think I think Mike was a brilliant guy. People give him a hard time because of the consolidation routines. I don't know if you guys ever read up on his consolidation routines. He basically had people training like 3 exercises every 10 days or 2 weeks. But I think he was just trying to keep people progressing. And he never said that that's what everyone had to do. He said, train intensely and then basically regulate your volume and frequency. There was nothing wrong about what he said, He said everyone has to find their ideal volume and frequency.
Do you find one of the things that I'm trying to do my exercises in a like slow, like you are showing in your videos, and I seem to have some emotional issues with that. I don't know what to call it, psychological, emotional. It's not really a physical limitation, but it's hard. It's physically hard too.
It's not too dissimilar
because, of
to
course,
yoga.
we're kind of, I don't know. Yeah, but it's I don't know where this obsession with repetitions,
Well, I think it comes from like people confuse I think mixing sports with exercise is one of the most, people confuse like shooting for numbers or like numbers are sports. Like you like that. I don't know how to describe this or say this properly, but like sports are about chasing numbers, and exercise, like powerlifting is not exercise. Olympic weightlifting is not exercise. They're sports. They're events. They're demonstrations of strength. So you have to practice those lifts, and you have to practice them exactly the way you perform them in competition. So they're almost completely different than strength training just to build muscle and get stronger. So I don't know. I think I just try to have people control the weight. You don't have to train as slowly as I do. I think where you reverse or how you reverse direction is key, and not excessively accelerating, not using leverage, trying to avoid leverage, because a lot of people see it as weightlifting. Move the weight, right? Move it from point A to point B. And then something good has to happen, right? And it actually could be the worst thing in the world if you try to just move it from A to B. That's really what I try to teach people. You don't have to train as slowly as I do. I feel better when I train that way. Like I feel like there's less wear and tear. I get a better feel in the whatever muscle group I'm targeting. So
for sure, absolutely for sure. But Craig, I think I'm kind of what I've achieved is by striving for doing it very slowly. I'm kind of halfway there, so I'm doing it much slower than before.
As long as you're not getting hurt, and as long as you're making progress, that's all that counts, And
I think I'm trying, going for the smooth, the smooth transition from, when you like in a lat pull, from when you pull to pull down and then up and then down again, just like continuous. I just like a continuous cycle with no abrupt movements.
I'm looking forward to getting in the gym in the morning.
That's another way to just meet. It's a safety issue, To me, it's a safety issue. It's the turnarounds where you reverse direction, how you reverse direction. And again, there are people that don't get hurt. I think a lot of people confuse like an acute injury with a chronic. Like they think I didn't get hurt during that workout, so it's okay to move the weight quickly and suddenly. And what happens is they have this accumulated micro trauma. And one day they could be doing something totally normal, and the injury could already exist, but they just it's like there's a straw that broke the camel's back type situation. And it's because of how they train. They train so quickly and haphazardly, and they confuse like an acute, like one-time injury. They think, oh, that's never happened to me, so I must be doing something right, or I must be training safely, and that's most of the time it's that micro trauma.
Yeah, exactly. I had it's not really a question, but we started this silly challenge back in May with all these push-ups.
Yep.
So I'm doing 250 push-ups now every day, which is it's not a wise thing, but it works. It's been working tremendously well to develop my pecs and my triceps with all these.
And I wouldn't try to convince you otherwise. So it would only be if you said, "Hey, I'm not developing."
Somehow
it works. Yeah.
But I do think that actually because I was trying to reconcile this in my mind. And how can I in Craig's terms and in Mike Mentz's terms, how can I reconcile this in my head? How can it work? But I think the reason
I would tell you, yeah.
No, but I kind of came to the conclusion that the reason is probably because, when I do the push-ups, I do all the sets, I do them to failure. So even though there are quite a lot of reps, because I just do them with body weight. So basically what I do now is I'm at three sets of 84. And at 84, up to about 60, it's anaerobic. Nothing happens. I'm not out of breath.
Yeah.
From 60 to and then when I get to 80, I'm just it's like a sprint.
Yep.
I'm just totally toast after that. So
yeah. See, I wouldn't tell you if you're doing well with that. I wouldn't say you shouldn't do that. I mean, that would sound like completely ignorant of me. If you said, well, I'm not making progress, I'd say, well, you should probably maybe not do them every day, or maybe, but you're obviously recovering and adapting. So
yes,
I personally, my recovery ability sucks.
I did try one day with 500, which is absolutely doable. But actually then in my case, I was thinking of nothing else all day than the push-ups. When am I going to do the next set? And so
I think
that's not practical. So I think.
Did you find that your lats have improved as well doing that at all, Klaus? Because just for me, when I do push-ups, even if I try and focus in on the chest, I get so much pump in my lats at the same time. I don't know if my
it's funny that you say that, because just this morning I was just wondering that, why am I feeling this in my lats and even my biceps? It doesn't make any sense to me. But so yes, but the big push for my lats was the 100 pull-ups per day in July. Well, to be honest, I did it 26 days in July, and then I couldn't do that. Then my elbows were hurting so much. So, but anyway, I'm back to I do lat pulls on the machine. So I do a couple of different kinds of lat exercises. But during that period when I did all those, I really gained, especially in my armpit area. I forget what the muscle is called, but the smaller muscle which is under the armpit. So some good growth with an intense period of doing it. But I do think probably I would have more gains even with the with push-ups if I did them every other day or 3 times a week.
Maybe, but you never know. Like I said, that would be the direction I would push you in if you weren't happy.
But I think there's another point as well. I think which is just I think some of us have some self-discipline issues, and I certainly do. And I just find it's mentally easier if I have to do it every day, rather than I have to do it 3 times a week. Or that's why I go to the gym 6 days a week, and then I just spread out my exercises. So I do the exercise, each muscle group I hit twice a week, and that seems to I could do it even 3 times a week, but otherwise I'm afraid I'm going to fall off the wagon.
Yeah, sure, that totally makes sense. I enjoy training, so it's hard for me to stay out of the gym. Because I enjoy the feeling. It's like a drug to me. I've always enjoyed the pump, so yeah. So training 3 times a week is, it sounds funny, but it's kind of hard for me, Yeah,
no, it's very, very, very relatable and understandable. Yeah, the pump. It's just, it's great.
Yeah, I completely understand what you mean by being addicted to it, because this time round, I didn't want to become obsessed with it. So what I've done is got a membership 60 miles away from my house where I work.
What?
So yeah. It's where I work. So I have to go on the way to work, if you see what I mean. So if I've got a week off, that means I'm not going to the gym. If it was me 10 years ago, I'd be in the gym for 3 hours a day. So I'm just like, right, bit of extra recovery, go out, do some cardio, enjoy your family, blah, blah, blah. which can be a bit extreme. Just while we're talking about machines and stuff, are there any machines in that you use yourself which you find like amazing? Basically, like, are there any certain machines which you think are a breakthrough?
I'm proud to say I have the best equipment on the planet. It was always a goal of mine to get the best stuff in the world, and I was able to achieve that. And I have a line of, not a full line of MedX, and I have some really amazing Nautilus equipment. I have a machine from a company called Pendulum. It's a multi-station, like if you guys have used hammer strength.
Yes.
So it's like a multi-station hammer strength, and the guy that invented it, his name was Tyler Hobson, and I saw an ad in the magazine. He hadn't sold one, and I ordered it. I was his first customer back in 1999, and the thing is still, I mean, it's unbelievably well built. It's got like almost no friction. It's got an incredible squat machine attachment that I would bet anybody, if you ever use this squat machine, you'd never want to use a barbell again in your life.
What was that called? What was that machine called again?
But it's also comfortable. He doesn't make it anymore. It's called Pendulum. It was called the original Pendulum. I mean, You see like a pendulum squat. There's a few companies that make it's different than that. The company that makes it now, they make single station pieces, because Tyler sold it to this Rogers Athletic, I think is the name of the company he sold it to. But I can send you a link to like what the machine, what the squat machine, because there's a standalone squat, standalone leg press. Like the leg press is amazing too. But yeah, so I love the stuff I have, I think
it's great with good equipment. I don't know. Do you have or do any of you have this? Do you get kind of have a favorite machine?
Yes. And go ahead, Craig. You go first.
No, go for it, James. What's your favorite?
No, well, I've only discovered it over the last sort of month and a half, 2 months, and I've never been sort of brave enough to give it a go. But it's the tricep dip machine. So like I'm having to use about 14 kilograms worth of assistance at the moment to get some decent reps where I'm not sort of trying to use momentum or anything. My goodness, like you feel it more than just your triceps. Like you feel it in your shoulders, you can feel it in your biceps, like your forearms. I just lock everything in, so I'm not sort of stiff as a bone, and then just go through the reps. And
so is that like a gravitron?
It's basically you stick your knees on it, you stand up, stick your knees on, add some weight, and then you just dip. Yeah, nice and slow. Yeah, it's great. And I am guilty for doing another. I probably do about 3 sets of that, but it's because I love the machine.
Hey, like I said, whatever works, man. Whatever works.
That's the addiction part coming into it. What about yourself?
Yeah, I have a love affair with a Nautilus super pullover machine.
Love it. I wish I had one. That's the piece I don't have.
It's just I don't know. I feel like Arnold when I've done my exercise. I just feel so good. It has you in an inescapable grip.
Yep.
And you can only do the movement in the right way, and it just works. It just works. It works your upper stomach and your lats and your shoulders as well. It's just crazy.
Yeah, that's a great piece. That's probably the one piece if I could fit it in here, I would get it. It's in any form too, whether it was a MedX or Nautilus.
Yeah, and I don't know whether I have no idea whether they make these machines anymore. But the one we have, it's an old one. It's probably my guess is it's probably 20 years old. Yeah, or even 30 years. Yeah, it's an old one.
Yeah, I have a piece. It's Nautilus neck and shoulder. It's a shrug. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it or used it. That's probably from the same lines, like probably early 80s, early 1980s.
It's got it has these vacuum molded plastic coverings on it, light gray sort of thing. Yeah, nice. I know the one.
Yeah, it's hard for me to pick a favorite. I have probably my MedX torso arm because I can do a few different kinds of pull downs with it. I don't know if you guys have ever used the mag handles. I don't know. They look like it looks like something Batman would use.
Yes. Yeah,
their handles made for different pull downs. They have like wider grips, but I like the closer grip, like the chin up style supinated grip one. So that's probably my favorite exercise right now with the using the medics.
I think I saw you use it
It's in a lot
the
of
last few
vids.
days.
Yeah.
And I was just saying, I'm using exactly those from time to time. I switch on the lat pulls, so sometimes I
Yep.
use those on it.
Yeah, that's
We
cool
have
design. I
cable
like
machines.
it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, good
Yeah,
stuff.
so I've just got a question. So what sort of advice would you give? You can be as general or as detailed as you like, but about starting a journey for someone which is, overweight and they just want to sort themselves out, get healthy. And then apart from just starting, how would you advise that they maintain this?
I would say the journey, it depends on like how quickly they want their results. If they just want to like change their lifestyle and change, I always encourage my clients, if they're not going to do like a really strict 12-week fat loss plan, I said, change your foods, try to change, try to like kind of reverse that carbohydrate to protein ratio, eat more meat. I'll give them a plan to change their foods. And then the exercise, just 2 to 3 times a week. I think a full body routine is a great place to start, like the one that I suggested to you, the one that's on the website. You get all your bases covered and just try to, train as hard as you can, during each workout. It's as simple as that, I think. I mean, movement for movement's sake is fine. It's healthy, go for walks and all that stuff. I'm not a big, like, I don't encourage my clients to do cardio. I don't discourage them, but I don't think it doesn't stimulate fat loss. It's just movement. And if you don't enjoy it, you don't like doing it, don't do it. But if you enjoy it, do it. Do whatever you enjoy doing. We were meant to be active. We're meant to move. Human beings you're meant to move. So, but that's not going to necessarily, I mean, let's say if they're completely inactive, yeah, it'd be great to just go for a walk every day, maybe after dinner or something like that. But as far as like the most important focus should be strength training, and then changing your foods, changing to kind of like a low carb lifestyle, more animal based lifestyle. But if they wanted to do like a specific fat loss routine, I would give them monitor like 12 weeks, give them sample meal plan, which is what I do. And then if they want changes fast, they have to be strict.
Do you use the same advice for men and women?
Yeah, I don't believe in gender specific exercise routines I think that's a bunch of BS. I think I've actually, the majority of my clients in 30 years, I'd say like even now it's still 70-30 women to men. And there's not a person on this planet that's trained more women than I have. And if they have, they're out there, they're hiding, because I've trained more women than anyone on this planet. I've probably done more one-on-one personal training sessions than anyone on the planet. I mean, I'm over 80,000 in 30 years. So, and that's not bragging. That's just facts,
Mm.
So as far as instructing goes, I don't think anyone's trained more people than I have.
And do you find it? How good is I don't know what to call it, compliance, or how good is follow through for people, for your clients?
For the training or the diet? Because two dramatically different. The diet's been the bane of my existence for 30 years, trying to keep people compliant with that. But the training, it's interesting. I have been training some of the same people since my longest training client, I have 1995. They've both been with me since 95.
Amazing.
I probably have another dozen that have been with me over 20 years. Usually someone trains with me for a few months, they end up training for years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the compliance as far as the exercise goes is really good. I have a really good hit rate.
Yeah, it sounds
great.
I
think it's just having the appointment. People don't want to disappoint me. They want to show up. They like I develop a relationship with them. So
no, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I suppose I think one of the big issues with the diet compliance is that, the fact that we are bombarded with advertising and impulses to do the wrong thing, everywhere,
Yeah,
especially if you go shopping, but even if you don't go shopping.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's
100%.
And so have you come across
I'm an addict. I am an addict.
Yeah. Have you come across any clients which taken Ozempic or any of the GLP-1 drugs, and It's something that we've been asking a few people now. What's your take on Ozempic? So do you think there's a use case for it, or do you think it's something that should be avoided?
I honestly, I don't know enough. I don't know enough about it, to be honest. I mean, I know I've heard some of the negatives. I don't have any clients that are currently on it. I have a couple that want to take it. I've kind of, I don't know. I've tried to discourage them. I think like, the nature to be commanded must be obeyed. And they're always trying to, the pharmaceutical industry is always trying to flout nature. And I don't know. I've heard too many bad things about it. And I guess if it can help someone with like a jump start, and then they can get off of it, and then they can maybe do the things that I suggest, or get into like a healthy lifestyle, change their habits and then get off of it. Maybe it's good. I don't know. I just don't know enough about it.
Yeah,
I think kind of as a motivational tool almost to get things going, and then maybe taper off.
I mean, how do you guys feel about it?
Well, Klaus, go ahead. You can go first.
Okay, yeah, I agree with your point. I think I would definitely not recommend people using it unless probably very specific cases. I'm wondering if we'd have somebody who was very, very morbidly obese and maybe had severe problems moving and things like that. I think maybe there's a use case there, but the thing that bothers me with it is the stories I'm hearing about much of the weight loss also being muscle,
right?
So muscle fiber loss, which is one of the things that's so fantastic about a low carb or a ketogenic diet or fasting, is that you can kind of focus your weight loss and spare muscle, even though of course when you fast, 60% of the weight loss is lean mass, but most of the lean mass is actually water and
right.
other tissue, than almost no muscle. And then I think for me, the other thing is also that if you don't change your lifestyle, how the hell is the outcome going to be any better? If you keep doing the same stuff.
Precisely, yeah.
And having the same bad behaviors that have led you to the bad situation, how do you expect this really to get better if you don't get a handle on your head, get a handle on yourself?
Definitely.
So yeah, I'd say a little bit thumbs down for me for Ozempic and GLP-1 products.
Yeah. So my sort of thought on that is, the optimistic thought on that is, like you were discussing, is so if someone needs that boost or the kickstart. So for me and Klaus, it probably took a lot of time and thought and effort to fully indulge ourselves in being strict through a low carb diet. So imagine the sheer volume of people out there. It would be a high percentage of people compared to those who actually follow through with a low carb diet. If those people took Ozempic and then they had the little flame which is ignited inside them, and they think, right, I can do this, I can start going back to the gym now, I can get healthy and I can sort my diet out. That's the optimistic part of me. And then the other side is even more people that statistically probably just want to take a drug and continue eating a nutrient null diet, which will then lead to, like Klaus was saying, the muscle loss. And then it's probably more than likely going to accelerate metabolic disease. That's my opinion.
Definitely.
Yeah, so it just depends on what mindset the person is in.
100%, yeah. I do have a client, and she's got I don't know if you guys are familiar with PCOS, the hormonal condition.
Yeah. Sure.
And she's got PCOS, and she's been trying to get on Ozempic, and her insurance isn't paying for it. In her case, maybe because she actually has lost like 50 pounds. She's done a great job. She's changed her lifestyle, and but it's the PCOS has really wreaked havoc on her. I don't know enough about it, but I know it wreaks havoc on hormone levels, and so maybe for someone like her, it's more specific to her condition, I guess. I mean, everything has its place, but for the average person, I wouldn't recommend it.
No, exactly.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to get very anti big pharma with these things. I think just to make it clear, I'm not anti big pharma in any other sense than I think they should be held to account for any nonsense that they do. But a lot of the medications they've come up with have been very beneficial for many people. So. But I think another thing I would recommend for anyone who is starting out their journey, just to add on to the question, get on X and get in our low carb and carnivore communities. I think it's very helpful to have a kind of a largest group of people where you can find people who know all kinds of things about and have gone through the stuff that you are going through and can help you and support you. I think it's been, I felt it's been extremely beneficial for me to be on X. It's a huge learning experience.
Yeah, I agree, 100%.
And
I'm always scrolling to learn.
Yeah, 100%. And Craig, have we got you for another 10 minutes? Is that right?
Yeah, sure, definitely.
Yeah. Just one of the questions I like to ask is, this sort of humanoid robot that you've been seeing Tesla put out there doing all of these strange things. Yeah. How would you use one in your day-to-day life? Would you get one?
I don't know. I mean, how would I use one? Maybe to do chores. I don't know, clean. I mean, I'm kind of boring. I can't, I'd have to think about that one for a bit. But yeah, probably to just do stuff that I don't want to do.
Exactly.
I would say feed my dogs because they're a pain in the ass to feed. That might be the one thing. I love them to death, but they're pains.
What sort of dogs have you got?
How about you guys?
Would you get them to take the dog out for a walk as well?
I have two mixes. No, I enjoy walking the dogs. They're great to walk. They're just a pain in the butt to feed. But no, I have two mixes. One's he's definitely got shepherd in him. I don't know what his other, I don't know what else is in him. But then I have a female. She's a Rottweiler Lab.
Oh, beautiful.
And yeah, they're both awesome. Both great dogs.
Nice. Yeah, love dogs.
Yeah. So
go ahead, James.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that the use case could be like literally anything. And for me, it would be everything you've said, but you can expand it. Do the dishes. You can cut the grass.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, like everything. And Klaus, what about you? Have you thought about this at all?
I'm with Craig. Chores, do the dishes, and do the cleaning, and I'm kind of wondering if probably just a lack of imagination or something. Probably you could think up all kinds of things. I think if I were to think about this and plan it out, I'd probably try to find out what could I do with a few of those robots until everybody has them. Maybe sell some kind of a service that to others and build a bit of a business around it or something like that.
That's a great idea.
And of course the question is maybe you could use one as a personal trainer. I don't know.
Maybe people have been trying to like take my job for years. So, this automated personal training stuff, I don't think it's ever going to stick.
No, I'm just kind of thinking that, we place the robot with you, for a month, 2-3 months, whatever. And,
I train the robot
and then it just looks at you and, it listens and then, hey, this is how we do it.
I guess that's a good idea. Like if I trained a robot to instruct people, then I could train more people at once. That would be a great benefit. I didn't even think about that.
Also, yeah, you can leverage your, it's the only way to leverage your time to
exactly.
And then you could get somebody who is, they would act almost exactly like you, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. And they won't steal my clients. They won't go to another gym and take my clients with me because they'll be programmed to be loyal to me and to not do that.
You own them.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So there we go.
Exactly.
Are you putting your orders in soon then?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Where do I sign? Yeah. Great. Great stuff. I have just a question on something else. I wanted to ask you about kind of the longevity optimization. I think I think I don't know, I kind of came at this from a point of view. I was listening a lot to David Sinclair for a while and some other people. So I think, oh, okay, longevity, this is what I want. So it's about, about being in a caloric deficit all the time so that I can live to 150 and on all kinds of other things. But then I kind of switch over to, no, this is, I'd rather be happy and have some muscles.
Yeah.
What's your take on longevity and health and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think, there's probably no direct evidence that strength training or building muscle, it's definitely important to live. It's like a quality of life issue. So it's better to live well than necessarily live long, I guess, live as well as you can, live as full of life as you can. And that's the full physical life. So there's no question that maintaining your physical strength, because at a certain point, you go down. At a certain point, you're going to lose muscle no matter how hard you train. We're all going to age. We're all going to die. So, but I've seen clients, I have 5 people now that are in their 80s, and they've maintained their strength. Like a guy I trained this morning, he's 85. I've been training him since 2000, and he's maintained his strength for quite a while. He isn't as strong as he was, 15 years ago, but he's as strong as he was probably 10 years ago at 85.
Yeah, amazing.
So, and then, like I said, I think 5 people in their 80s, maybe another dozen in their 70s. And they're all at least maintaining their strength, which is a battle, which is, you still have to train just as hard. And I think it's definitely there's a longevity component or a part of longevity, I think.
Yes.
Maintaining muscular strength, maintaining muscular.
Yeah. And I think there's a metabolic component to it, which very much supports that the more muscle mass you have, the better you function metabolically. But of course, there's a simple mechanical element as well that, if you have good, especially lower body muscles, your slips, trips, and falls are going to be less. And if you have them, they're going to be less problematic.
Definitely.
Bone density, all these kind of things when you do more training. And just another question as well. What about, do you supplement yourself and do you recommend any kind of supplementation?
The older I've gotten and the more I've learned, I guess the less I use supplement wise. Right now, I really just use, I do like a magnesium glycinate at night before I go to bed. I'm just trying to see whether that helps me sleep better or more deeply. And then I think I do like the elements, the Elementi electrolyte mixes pre-workout. That's pretty much it. Basically, from your influence, I stopped doing the whey and the cottage cheese at night. That was like my protein supplement. That's been really big to not do that. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I was doing creatine for a while. I've done creatine on and off for 30 years. I just haven't gotten back in. I just haven't ordered any. I was using from a company. I was using a product from a company called Instantize or Gains in Bulk Instantized Creatine, because it dissolved really well. It was the best dissolving. But I kind of stopped doing that. I really haven't noticed a difference since I stopped. And I only stopped because I just got lazy and haven't ordered it. So so I really don't.
There's pretty good scientific evidence on the efficacy of creatine, both
definitely.
Both for muscle but also for cognitive function. But I think we might not be quite at the age where the cognitive bit is that noticeable yet.
Yep.
But that's one thing. The other thing with the whey and so taking a protein powder gives you, even though it doesn't give you a glucose spike, it will give you a massive insulin spike.
Okay.
And that's, I'm just speculating, and I'm guessing that can, for the night peeing and these kind of things. I think probably the insulin spike can have a more or less direct effect, especially on that and how well you sleep as a consequence of that. So
interesting.
Yeah. I take magnesium bisglycinate as well, by the way, so in the evening. So I don't know if it works. But
I was wondering with the creatine, I eat about 3 pounds of beef a day, so I don't know if that's like enough creatine.
probably, but I think there are a couple of, I think for the muscle aspect of it, I think most kind of agree somewhere around between 3 and 5 grams per day is what you need. But for the cognitive, if you want the full cognitive benefits, I think it was something like 10 or 12 grams. So,
Oh, wow.
so more than double. So anyway, I just take a big spoonful, which comes up to about 13, 14 grams.
Okay. I'm going to have to order more then.
And I certainly don't have any downside from it. I don't know if you have an upside, but who knows? It's cheap.
Yeah.
That's kind of my take on that. Anyway, Craig, any last recommendations, or what would be if you could tell your younger self, okay, this is what you got to look out for in life. What is the one important thing?
Life. I don't know. That's a tough one. I've definitely gotten much smarter as I've gotten older. I wouldn't trade 23 for 53. I love the way I am now. I love the way I think now compared to when I was 23. I just wouldn't trade it. I wish I had more time. I wish I had, I'm thinking maybe I have a good 20 years left. Maybe I think I have a great 10 years left, a good 20 years left, and hopefully a decent 30 years, hopefully I'm in my mid 80s and I'm still moving around. But no, I don't know. I just, yeah, hopefully. But no, life's good. I can't complain at all. Great. My wife and I have been married for 25 years. I have a great relationship. My kids are awesome. They're my best friends. So I wouldn't trade anything.
That's awesome. Wonderful.
Thanks so much for sharing.
Stuff. Anyway, Craig, thank you very much for joining us today. Well. Thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure. It's been great. Thanks for having me.
And anyway, we're probably gonna try and get you back at some point for some
I would
specific.
Love it. Anytime. I'd love it. And if I get the balls to do my own podcast, I'll definitely have you guys on. So if you want to be on, so
yeah, 100%.
Of course.